Hi, this is Outlaw Bookseller. It's a nice day out there. I'm feeling relatively inspired after a day of lassitude, a Saturday sitting around filming one Hawkwind video for future release, and generally just sort of kicking back really and listening to Hawkwind. I sort of awoke this morning in a fairly cosmic mood, so I thought we'd have a look at some of the stuff I've picked up recently. I'm going to do books, but I just thought I'd mention this as an aside. Just got Hawkwind the Emergency Broadcast Years, late 90s stuff, which I didn't really get into until relatively recently, apart from the Business Trip Live, which is a great album. I don't talk too much about Hawkwind because I talk about them a lot elsewhere, but I would say if you've got your issues about 90s Hawkwind, get yourself this Business Trip Live, marvellous record. Contains best ever version of Quarks, Natures and Charm. So there's a little tip for you. You can't get these, you can get it individually. So one of my old friends from South Wales, Chris Jones, hi Chris, mentioned a while ago he'd like to see me cover some Doc Smith. And I have mentioned Doc Smith a couple of times, and it just so happens that I'm in a very fundamentalist mode about genre fiction at the moment. And as you will have seen, I've been picking up lots of A formats. So I was in Bath the other day trolling the second-hand outlets, and what I tend to find is that there'll be maybe 3 or 4 in a town, but you'll only ever get good scores at one. On another day, it'll be a different bookshop up to the 3 or 4, what have you. And I think I got these from Dorothy House. Went to a good shop, good sort of cause there. And I'll begin with a populist thing, Asimovs Foundation, with a nice Chris Foss cover there. I've had this edition before, and I sold it on. This cost me about £2. These are worth picking up if you see them in good nick, because you can always sell them on. But absolutely lovely. So I think I'm probably working on getting the one in this livery trilogy that I don't have. So absolutely beautiful. You can't really go wrong with that. So the beauty of the A format has returned to seduce me in my old age. Not that it ever went away. We were only briefly estranged, if at all. And looking at Doc Smith, the man who invented space opera circa 1915, as I've said before, he was a food scientist who invented the correct mix for donuts so that your sugar sticks to them. So sugar and space opera, 2 of the great inventions, great fun. And I picked this up, again, because of its spectacular cover, Subspace Encounter, which was supposedly the last novel that he wrote. Slightly sort of rippled spine, but again, a wonderful Foss cover, absolutely unreadable. But, you know, I just had to have it. You know, it was something like £1. Absolutely fantastic. You can't go wrong, really. And then I came across a couple more Doc Smiths. Lord Tederick, which I've been thinking about buying a US edition from, which has a wonderfully lurid cover, more lurid than this, believe it or not. And Lord Tederick, Black Knight of the Iron Sphere. These are the titles. Queen's Award for Lurid, as I've said before. And these are published by Star in there's the Star logo there, in the Wyndham Books imprint, if you can see that. I mean, Star was the runt of the litter amongst the great paperback houses of the 70s and 80s in the UK. And Wyndham was their imprint, which was even runtier. But you had to love it, really. I think the only Wyndham book I ever bought new was a film tie-in adaptation of The Enforcer for the 3rd Dirty Harry film with Clint Eastwood. And I read it time and time again as a teenager. And it was actually really good. It's better than the film. The characterization was better. The film, I thought, really fluffed the story. Didn't really bring out the nuance that the crappy tie-in novel, and I can't even remember who it was by, brought out. So there you go. So, you know, these are, I think, sort of slightly later ones, but nice and slim. All the cliches, just what you want when you're in space ritual mode. Moving on, a little imprint that was started about, I think, about 86, was Venture SF, which was part of Legend, which was part of Arrow. And the whole idea of Venture was that, you know, it wouldn't be boring. There wasn't any fantasy. There wasn't any of that sort of new wave stylistic stuff. There was good straight ahead action. And this is Stephen Golding, Assault on the Gods. And he sort of completed some Doc Smith stories later on, because there were lots of fragments and things. So you'd see Doc Smith's name in huge letters on the cover of Panther books, and his name in sort of tiny writing. I think it was the Family Dallender he did a lot of work on. And I got this from Fantastic Literature. And do you know, I do think that Simon there has got somebody, or has bought books from somebody, who somehow managed to colour the text blocks, because I'm sure this wasn't issued with a coloured text block, because this is very uncommon in the UK, this sort of thing, until recently, and it was a US standard. So maybe this was done for, you know, a US import, but I'm slightly baffled by that. So I'm going to ask him to look into that. I got this because I saw it for £2 in Bath Market a while ago, and I didn't buy it. I went back the next day, it was gone. And at the time when these came out, I was sort of anti these. So I thought, never mind all this pulpy crap, you know, let's get on to the serious literature. But now, you know, nostalgia comes onto you and seizes hold of you, and you get a warm glow. And I've never actually read Golden, so we shall see. Apparently this is better than you would think it would be, according to many sources, but we'll find out, I suppose. Fantasy. By the time I post this, I probably will have posted a couple of things I've shot about my feelings about contemporary fantasy and how dreadful it is. So, you know, I have been sort of in the mood recently where I've been looking back to the sort of motherlode, to the source, to the beginning of Sword and Sorcery, as I see it. And of course that involves Robert E. Howard. So I picked up this lovely Sphere book of the King Kull stories. Absolutely beautiful. So I'm looking forward to reading that, because I have read some of these, but never the complete thing. So, you know, that's one of the preeminent sort of fantasy archetype characters alongside Conan that Howard came up with. So absolutely beautiful. They just don't make them like that anymore. And of course, these things are out of copyright now, but, you know, there haven't been mass market editions for ages and ages. And Conan particularly, I kind of feel sad about, because there's a sort of Golax faux leather £35 complete Conan, which hardly anybody buys. And you should be able to buy it in like a little box set of 3 paperbacks or something to combat, you know, the sort of archetypal Tolkien hordes. Let's cleave them in twain from shoulder to thigh with our broadswords, is what I say about them. All those hobbits and things. You know, let's give it the dark. So it'll be great fun. I also picked up a book which I used to have a first of, and I got rid of foolishly. It was given to me by a German customer of a mail order book selling thing I wrote in the 80s, and that's Poul Anderson's 3 Hearts and 3 Lions. Which is marvellous, and another beautiful Sphere one there. Look at that cover, absolutely gorgeous. And again, really fine fantasy writing, really artful and yet adventurous, and all the archetypes are there, but really beautiful writing there. It'd be great to have that in the collection again, because I did let a lot of my fantasy novels go for space reasons, which was a huge mistake. So I am picking them up as I can find them in good nick and at reasonable prices. And preeminent amongst fantasy writers, to my way of thinking, and to many, is the absolutely sublime Jack Vance Dying Earth series. And this was the second Dying Earth book. This is the first full novel in the sequence, The Eyes of the Overworld, featuring Hugo, which is just magnificent. I mean, when I first read this, my comment was that if William Shakespeare was still alive and he was writing fantasy, he would write like this. It's so elegant and witty and clever and funny, and you know, this is sort of the sort of stuff that nobody does anymore, and it's just brief and economical, and you know, there's real wisdom and elan in this, and you know, this is the standard. You know, this guy was started doing this stuff in 1950, so, and today you just get these bloated things, and you know, books like this. So if you ever see a copy of this, pick it up. Vance's books are going up and up and up in price, even the paperbacks, and they're getting harder and harder to find, but they really are wonderfully artfully written books. So, and that one I'm really glad to have that back in the collection so I can reread. Going back to Robert E. Howard, I picked this up. This is an uncommon volume that you won't see very much, but I absolutely love the cover, and it's part 2. There was a book called The Dark Man, which was published by Arkham House, the publisher set up to commemorate H.P. Lovecraft and to preserve his works and rebuild his legend. And of course, Robert E. Howard used to write for Weird Tales and magazines like the magazines that Lovecraft wrote for, and he wrote some mythos stories as well. And this is The Dead Remember, And I just think this is a wonderful, wonderful illustration that conflates the very, very best of heroic fantasy, anti-heroic fantasy, and sort of doomy horror darkness. And these are basically horror stories. And I was reading this the other night, and there's a story in here, the opening story, People of the Dark, in which a character goes into a cave and he's pursuing a girl he loves who is basically telling another man that she loves him and not the protagonist. And he sort of slips into the consciousness of Conan. And it really made me think this was possibly the source of Moorcock's idea of the eternal champion, and John Dacre, Erekose, how he is awake in the consciousness, and he is conscious of all the avatars of the champion, unlike the others who just get flashes. Elric gets flashes of Jerry occasionally, and so on and so on. And I thought that was probably in this. And the writing's very crude, but very powerful, but absolutely beautiful books. I was really pleased to pick that up, because this is a really difficult one to get hold of these days. So I'm looking out for more of these, try and get my Howard collection built up a bit, because despite the crudity, you know, they are the source of all this kind of thing, really. There are precursors, yes, there's William Morris, there's Edgar Rice Burroughs, but Howard is the one who really nails it and boils it down and brings the doom and the laughter into it. It's fantastic stuff. Finally today, a while ago I mentioned that I'd got rid of all my Fritz Libra books some years ago, which was a grave mistake because he was a very fine artist, again for space. And I've managed to replace 5 of the 6 Fafard and Grey Mouse Lankmar books. I'm only missing one now, the first one, Swords Against Deviltry, which ironically was the only one I had in this livery. And these are Grafton editions from the mid to late 80s, and they're absolutely beautiful. And if you don't know Fafard and the Grey Mouse, they are these 2 amazing characters that Libra created about 1940 with assistance from a friend. And he wrote about them right the way up until the 80s. And so these are short stories grafted into novels. And they are about a tall northern urban barbarian called Fafard, who comes from a country dominated by women in the snow. And there's a story called The Snow Women, which is fantastic and very, very funny. Kind of like a sort of a feminist a sword and sorcery story. It's really, really good. And the Grey Mouser, who's a little guy who's a thief, and together they thieve, reave and slay, end up falling in love, end up losing their women, battling with demons, monsters, wizards, and what have you. And all the cliches are there, but they're so eloquently done. And Libra was a Shakespearean actor. You know, he was a very talented man. And you know, these are the loveliest these books ever looked. And there are 7 in total, actually, because he wrote The Knight and Knave of Swords very late in his life, which was a full novel and the last one. But they are very, very hard to find in these conditions. You just have to keep your eyes peeled. And they're so elegant. And you can pick them up, just read one of the novellas inside, put it down, go back to it a few weeks, a few months, or whenever later. And, you know, you're not sort of overburdened with this endless sort of quest-based nonsense that you get from Tolkien and his acolytes. You know, even the hard and fast school now, people like Joe Abercrombie, Brandon Sanderson, all these people, they feel the need to sort of pad out, you know, their attitude with all this, you know, world building nonsense, which is so boring. But these are elegant and fleet and gorgeous. So, you know, so I'm sort of going back to the roots of both genres there, of space opera and heroic fantasy, and having great fun doing so. So that's what I picked up recently. I'm going to go out soon and get out to a little area on the other side of Bath and film a literary landmark, which I'm going to post a video about at another time, which has connections to the Gothic. So we look forward to that. This is Outlaw Bookseller signing out for now.